Let's come back to Tony Blair and whether, in the light of the Iraq War, he can be effective in the Middle East. Shirley Williams.
I think that Tony Blair is actually a considerable politician. I think it's just silly to pretend that he isn't. Having said that, I do agree that with Mr. Hitchens, that certainly...
Which one? Two Hitchens here.
Well, I was trying to step out of the massive brotherly love that we're seeing around here. I think that there was a huge mistake, I agree with Christopher Hitchens, in the fact that Tony Blair did suggest that the weapons of mass destruction was the reason we went into Iraq. It never was, and I agree that probably it was invented as an excuse, sort of, because they intended to go into Iraq anyway, and my party, of course, opposed it from the very beginning. Having said that, I think the fact that Bush could suggest that Tony Blair should be an envoy to the Middle East shows how out of touch he is with the Middle East. I can think of something less likely to be successwul than that. It's quite obvious.
If you say that you thought the weapons of mass destruction was invented, why did he say, as Pete Hitchens quoted, in the debate, I mean, just before the decision was made, that even at this 11th hour, Saddam could prevent an invasion?
I think it was quite clear that we had stuck to the argument about weapons of mass destruction, and we actually refused to allow the inspection to be completed that would have enabled him to say that there were no...
I remember, to be fair to Blair, and there's no particular reason to be fair to him, but I remember him making a very powerful and very passionate case for the removal of Saddam Hussein as a tyrant. I remember that being the single most persuasive thing in that debate on March the 18th, 2003.
As did President Bush in Iran.
And it was very powerful and very moving. And I actually think, funny enough, quite seriously, I think there is a bit of merit in using, when he recovers his strength from the holiday you want him to have, Tony, I think he should be sent out. I think Gordon Brown should appoint him our man in Baghdad.
You don't want to last long.
I'll tell you what. I'm quite serious about this, because it would show that when we went to war not for oil, not for all the reasons that are attributed to the West, but because we wanted to alleviate the condition of the people of Iraq, and we wanted to improve their lives. And it'd be a fantastic display of his commitment to the project he embarked on if he were to go there.
Do you still think it was right, Boris, the war in Iraq?
Right. No, I think the whole thing's a disaster, but I think it was right to get rid of Saddam Hussein.
You were for it?
I was.
All right, let's hear from a member of the audience. The man in the blue shirt there, and then I come to you in the front. Yes.
Having been acknowledged as one of the chief architects of the invasion of Baghdad, how could he possibly have any credibility as a peace envoy?
I agree.
That's your view?
Yeah.
And you
a similar point, in the sense that of all the main parties involved in this, how could he conceivably have been thought of as a peace envoy for the Middle East? The people involved. Only America would find Tony Blair acceptable. Not Europe, I don't think, certainly not Russia, and certainly not the people of the Middle East.
Do you agree with this?
I don't. That's simply not the case. He went on a tour of most of the capitals soon after what went on last summer, and was greeted very, very warmly in each and every capital of all the major players around the Middle East region. I just simply don't think that's the case at all. And what's gone on in Baghdad and Iraq is almost shows the urgency, not least what's gone on in Gaza and everywhere since, of trying to find some resolution for, as he's described it and others, the greater Middle East region, Iraq all the way through to the Israel and Palestinian Authority.
What's he achieved in the course of his period in office to help the creation of a Palestinian state, the two-state solution? What's he actually done that would qualify him to go back there now as an envoy that both sides would accept?
Much of it, as is the case in the Middle East, are small baby steps, but you have George Bush, the US president, and people forget this, now with his White House totally sold on a two-state solution. Even Clinton hadn't got to that stage. That is significant improvement.
It was terribly late. I mean, it's almost impossible now.
That's by the by. If we're discussing progress in the Middle East in proper historical terms, these are significant advances.
Mr. McNulty is right, or even that he knows that George Bush is the first and only American president to have used the expression Palestinian state. Jimmy Carter never said it. Bill Clinton never said it. It had never been said by a president before.
Yes?
Slip of the tongue.
Well, probably not.
No, it was a response. It was the actual American response to the attack on New York on September the 11th, 2001, to actually declare themselves a Palestinian state. That was their response.
The lady at the back there.
I don't mean to make this flippant, but I'm wondering why we're talking about a job for Tony Blair. Shouldn't he be looking at community service following his early release?
All right, yes.
I just wonder whether Gordon Brown hasn't suggested this to try and keep Tony out of being President of Europe.
And you say yes in the brown T-shirt.
Not just an issue about Iraq, but also about Blair's bias for Israel. He protected Israel when it invaded Lebanon, and he stopped a ceasefire. He's regularly pressured Hamas, and didn't the UN envoy recently say that it was a direct result of the embargo on Hamas that has led to the situation that we're now facing in Gaza, where there's a civil war?
Well, with respect, everyone's blamed everybody in the whole Middle East for what's going on in Gaza, except Hamas. Christopher's very close friend, George Galloway, when asked, went through a litany of everyone who was to blame for it, except Hamas. If there has got to be people talking to each other, Fatah, Hamas certainly, getting back to the National Unity Government, and there has got to be development towards what everyone broadly agrees is a two-state solution. The fact that the first president, US president, actually accepts that, and hopefully that'll be built on subsequently, I think is a huge advance in an area where small steps and small advances
the US president
are so
has done nothing to stop the continuation of the building of settlements, nothing to suggest that the walls should be put back in an internationally accepted...
dismantling all the settlements in Gaza.
I wish you'd let me finish just once in a while.
Don't stop, and then
all right,
you won't be able to
shout
get in.
All right.
Being so self-pitying.
Okay, he did not... When they tried to get the wall back to the internationally agreed line, which was accepted by the Israeli Supreme Court, he did not get the support of either the British Prime Minister or the American President, and the gentleman there is absolutely right. We allowed the Lebanon, southern Lebanon, to be laid flat, with no attempt to bring about a ceasefire, despite the desperate pleas of the Lebanese democratic government itself.
So Tony Blair has no standing, in your view?
Not in the Middle East. I said I thought he was a considerable politician. I do believe that.
All right, let's go on. Francis Benny, please.
Why did Gordon Brown offer Paddy Ashdown a seat in his cabinet?
This is the strange story today of what happened on Monday, Tuesday, where are we? Thursday night. Every hour something different happens. Boris Johnson, why do you think Gordon Brown offered Paddy Ashdown a seat in the cabinet?
Well, I feel very sorry for the Liberal Democrats because you know they've been absolutely ruthlessly tricked by Gordon. It's a standard thing that you know Labour, this new Prime Minister Blair did it himself with poor old Paddy Ashdown 10 years ago, didn't he? You dangle before them the prospect of red boxes and ministerial rovers and all the rest of it, and suddenly their eyes bug out and their tongues start lolling, and they see power, which of course they're very unlikely to taste under any other circumstances, and then he lures them in with gently smiling, he says, you know, we will have a ministry of all the talents, and Paddy and Shirley, we're going to get you all in.
But that never worked. And
then what happens is, of course, they agree to this, and then he ruthlessly, brutally exposes them.
He didn't agree to it. We said no.
Sorry, we're talking about Brown or Blair here?
We're talking about Paddy Ashdown.
Said no.
Are you talking about Brown or Blair?
He brutally exposes the fact that
no.
they've been involved in talks.
And Alex Carlisle said no.
And he then brutally exposes them as being willing to go in with a Labour government. And of course, it's greatly to the discredit of the poor old Liberal Democrats.
It's all untrue. It's a sort of Cameronian argument.
It's not. It's actually they were having long talks about a government of all the talents.
They were asked to... They invited Paddy, because he's a very able man, and he said no. They invited Alex Carlisle, because he's the terrorist expert, and he said no. So I don't know why you're saying we all said yes because we wanted ministerial cars, which incidentally are not that great a deal anyway. And I would add one more thing.
Were you approached?
No, of course I wasn't approached.
Would you have accepted had you been approached?
Why not? Would you have taken Tony's
Wait a minute, and you're a woman? Is Gordon Brown anti-woman?
I'm not sure.
Has he offered?
I would have said that.
Wait a moment. No, but you said it very interesting. You said I wasn't approached. I'm too old, and I'm a woman.
Yes, well, the combination
You've held cabinet office in a Labour government before.
But Gordon Brown is not Jim Callaghan or Harold Wilson.
Oh, I see.
Okay.